the other room in the apartment is haunted by some way, because for the past 2 years, none of my roommates last more than a month. And for some reason, they just evacuate. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the PodCAPS, the new season for you guys at UTA. We are a bunch of students at UTA trying to be the mediator between you and counselors at CAPS. I hope that you will accompany us through this new season. We had our first season last spring, and now we're back with you trying to provide with information and just conversations of all sorts that I hope you guys will find interesting. So here with me today, we're going to have two more CAPS ambassadors. I'm a CAPS ambassador. My name is Reza. I'll introduce the other two and basically give them the floor so they can introduce themselves more in depth. The other two CAPS ambassadors. Let's first start with Dre. Dre.
Hello, yes, my name is Dre. I am actually a first semester CAPS ambassador. I'm a senior here at UTA studying psychology. It's really exciting to be here. I think PodCAPS, I remember when it came out last spring, and that's kind of what drew me to CAPS. And I'm really glad to be in this position now and be on PodCAPS with you guys.
I'm Ayleanna. It's my first semester here as well. I'm a freshman at UTA. I'm also studying in psychology. And I first heard about CAPS overall at freshman orientation. And I just knew it was something I immediately wanted to be a part of because I believe that mental health is extremely important. And I also love helping people. And this is just a mixture of those two things for me.
That's awesome. So a little bit of context for the audience. So first of all, my name is Reza, as I said, and this is my second year at CAPS. And so among we three, I'm the only person who was part of PodCAPS previous semester. And I'm a graduate student, computer science. So I have a question for you guys, for both of you, Ayleanna and Dre. So my question is, did you guys ever hear about our PodCAPS in the previous semester?
Yeah, like I said, I did. I actually had a close friend who was a CAPS ambassador. If you guys remember him from last semester, Jed, he talked about it all the time, and I was like, okay, you sold me on it. So I used to listen to the episodes, and I was kind of jealous of him. I was like, that sounds really cool. I kind of want to be on a podcast.
There you go. You're here now. Dreams do come true, right?
Manifestation. Yes.
I was doing some research on the whole organization program, and I saw like on the website of the PodCAPS specifically, and it was one of those things I actually asked Cindy about. I was like, hey, like, are you guys still doing this, with all the COVID stuff going on? I just thought it was really interesting. So here I am just talking.
Yeah, so as guys touched on this, so in the previous semester, which was at the beginning of COVID, that semester, we had a few episodes. You can go to YouTube or Spotify and just search PodCAPS, PodCAPS, and we had a bunch of episodes on different topics. And you can always go back and see whatever we recorded. But here we go again. We're here. We hope that this season goes very well, even better than before. We'll learn, and we'll have even more support from you students. And we have some interesting and exciting new announcements coming up that we will get to at the end of this episode. All right, so, I just talked about this basically COVID thing that happened last semester. I can imagine it caused a lot of trouble for a lot of people, troubles and stresses of all sorts. What really interests me at this point is to ask you guys if you've been affected in any way, first of all, because of this. What stresses you went through, firstly, maybe in the previous semester when it all started, or maybe now. Just walk me through and walk the audience through this whole experience that you had with the COVID, as far as your school goes or work goes, personal life. Dre, you want to start?
Sure, yeah, no. So I'm actually a commuter student. I live in Fort Worth, which isn't too far from UTA. So when all of this COVID stuff started, I knew that it was going to have the biggest impact on my social life because I'm an introvert, and really going to UTA, driving up there and going to class is my social time. Like, that is the most time I have with other people is just sitting next to somebody in class. So I knew once it kind of started getting serious, and once that like 2 week period was over when we thought we were going to come back and we didn't, I was just like, yeah, this is probably going to take a really big toll on my social life. And it has. I don't want to go out too much and break regulation, so I've been kind of strict on that, but it's been difficult in that aspect of not being able to kind of be around people. And it definitely opened my eyes to how, even as an introvert, being around other people, even if it's just sitting in class, is such a big deal to me, and probably to a lot of other people as well.
Interesting. That's a good point. So a lot of people would think that for introverts this was the dream time, but
Yeah, it was. I mean, it is. Let me tell you that. I loved it. I love being at home. I'm such a homebody, and I'm saving so much money, honestly. But it's just like the little things, being around other people, or that exciting moment when you're like walking to class and you see your friend. Like, that was pretty much the highlight of my day. And like now it's just a little different because I mean, I get to see my mom, but it's not the same.
okay, say more quietly. She doesn't hear the.
I know. Yeah, it's definitely.
Okay.
I agree with Dre on how it does take a toll on your social life. I know before all of this happened, I was actually in high school preparing for graduation and prom and all that. So spring break was coming up, and it's that time where you get that rest, you get to hang with your friends and all that. So when they said we'll get that extra week, everybody was super pumped and excited. But then they were like, "Oh, we won't be returning in April until April." I was like, "Huh? What do you mean?" And things just really went downhill from there. And it stressed me out, and it still kind of does stress me out because things start to get really repetitive. Like, you wake up, you eat, sleep, do work, do this, do that. And that kind of just took a toll on me because I'm someone who's used to like going out to the mall or going to concerts, just really, really social, being out there, just doing new things and exploring the world. So it's really just taken a toll on the things that I used to do that I wouldn't really have to worry about getting sick. Like being at a concert, you're in a big crowd of people just jumping and having fun, and you can't do that now because you don't know who around you could potentially get you sick, and then it's just a whole problem. So yeah, it does play, or it does take a huge toll on social life for sure.
That's interesting because that was some way that I was affected too. I live alone. I kind of don't, but I kind of do. I always had a roommate, and for some reason, I think that room, basically an apartment mate. The other room in the apartment is haunted by some way, because for the past 2 years, none of my roommates last more than a month, and for some reason, they just evacuate.
It might just be you, Reza.
It's either me or the last person who lived in that room. So yeah, so if you ever see me as your roommate, you better not come close. Warning. Yeah, Halloween coming up.
Right? Yeah.
This sounds.
I don't think. I don't
So
think
yeah,
it's true. It's you.
might be. I don't know. I have to figure out. So the point is, my roommate at the time lived in Austin, so he left for home because of the extension of spring break. And at the end, when they said that you don't have to come back, basically you shouldn't come back. It's more that you didn't have to. I mean, if you were able to come back, but there was no school going on, so people started basically leaving the campus. And then what I had to face was just repetitive days with the same routine, one after the other. Because I'm a graduate student again. I have no classes to attend. It's all independent study in the computer lab and in my office. All I see is basically 3-4 people at max during the day. I remember in normal days that I would just take German. I mean, I like German, just the language I'm saying. But one of the reasons I was studying it, it wasn't just because of the language. It was it was also because of the fact that it exposed me to some social interaction with different people. And all of a sudden that was taken away from me. So that little interaction that I had with people, especially undergrads, because undergrads are more lively than grad students. So and although I'm a grad student, I have very close relationship with undergrads, as you guys can tell here. So so it was very depressing for me. I took my time for probably 2 weeks straight just to be depressed, and even wrote a song for myself just to express my feelings. Because as you said, like Dre said, that what she was looking forward to was that little interaction and greeting to that friend. And all of a sudden, those little things in life were highlighted and how much we miss them. So how did you guys, basically like Dre, how did you basically cope with that? Did you come up with some strategies to counter that? I don't know, back then or even now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, kind of going back to what I said, like, I'm not going to actively leave just because I think we should all be following regulations and stuff, but I try my best to find different ways in terms of staying social, FaceTiming my friends and stuff like that. But it honestly wasn't the same thing. It is different. I don't know. You just really can't put that. You can't FaceTime someone and be like, oh, it's like the same thing. It's not the same thing. But little things, kind of like you said, falling into a routine. I fell in love with Dunkin' over quarantine, Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know why. So that's something that I would do, and it became really cool because the lady at the drive-thru window memorized me, and she was like my new friend. She was my quarantine friend. So that kind of it was like a two birds, one stone situation. I was kind of breaking my routine, but also I made a friend. So it was really nice. But even that, after a while, it became part of my routine, and it's just like, wait, this is supposed to break my routine. So I don't think I do have like a solid answer to that. I don't think anyone does because it's so new to all of us, but it's just an everyday thing, trying to find something that is worthwhile while being in quarantine or while following these social regulations. But at the end of the day, I'm still loving it because I am an introvert, and I've kind of just grown to deal with it in the most like kind of pessimistic way. I've kind of said, okay, well, this is what it is, and that's completely fine. I think CAPS, even though this is later on in our little quarantine session, has been a big help. We do meet weekly, and it's just really cool because I don't know any of y'all prior, so it was like basically like making new friends. It's like when you start the new semester and you make new friends. So I'm really glad I joined CAPS because I feel like that's kind of filling the void in some terms.
Mm-hmm. So a question from you, Dre. If I told you right now that this situation is going to last for another 2 semesters, and let's say by that time you were still a student at UTA, would you take it or leave it?
It's not a good question to ask me because I'm supposed to graduate in a semester. So if I wasn't graduating, I would take it 100%. But since I am graduating, I'm ready for it to be over with. I want to have a graduation. I want to walk the stage. But if I was in somebody else's shoes, I definitely would take it. I love it. I really can't complain. I do love it.
I mean, all of you might have friends at home or somewhere else that you've heard that they're not really. I mean, of course they've suffered in a way or another, but at the same time, they've found some peace or some silver lining in this new way of life. So it's not as gloomy as one might think for everyone, but I'm sure there are people out there that are having a harder time than, let's say, Dre.
Yeah.
What about you?
For sure.
What about you, Ayleanna? Are you more closer? Do you have like have you been through the same circumstances as Dre, or a bit being an extrovert or a bit more severe in any sense, or have you grown or come up with some ways to address those stresses or struggles?
Well, I know one thing that I have learned during quarantine was just to be grateful for everything that I have, mainly because I didn't know how special being able to go out to eat was until we couldn't go anywhere. One thing that my family did during quarantine, we found different like hiking trails and stuff like that to still get out of the house and be active, just to have fun and see something other than the backyard or the TV. So that's one thing we did. And also, I know Dre had mentioned FaceTime and how it's not the same, and it's really not. But I was really thankful for being able to like talk to my friends, at least like to see their face. And it is different from being in person, but I felt like that was really important just to not lose any bond and just keep up with one another, check in, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Do you want to share where that trail is?
Well, I live back in Houston, so there's multiple different parks. There were some like in Huntsville. There were some in the Spring area. It's just a lot of places.
Yeah.
Oh, so you live far from family right now.
For now, it's like 3.5 hours, and it kind of freaks me out a little bit just not being able to, drop in and see how everybody's doing. But it's okay. I'm learning to grow, and distance isn't always a bad thing, so it's helping me become more independent for sure.
Can you tell audience, like, are you living alone on your own, or like, I suppose you're living on campus right now?
Yes, right now I am on campus. I stay in West Hall and I have a roommate, which it helps things out, just like having that person there to talk to. So it makes things a lot easier for me. It's a lot smoother for sure.
What about you, Dre?
Well, best friends with my mom and dad since like 6 months ago. I mean, you, you learn
How
to
was that
love.
experience?
I've commuted since I started college, and like I'm a senior now, so what is that, 4 years? It's not any different. I think something, and I've heard this a lot from other people that I'm struggling with living at home, is that sense of boundary with your parents. Like they think because I'm home all day and I do have all online classes that I have all the time in the world for them. But the way I try to explain it to them is it's like a 9 to 5 job. Like, maybe there are hour gaps between my classes or some free time I do have, but I can't just get up and do something as soon as they need it, because I might need to focus on a class or do something like this. I mean, it took a lot of coursing to get them to stay quiet during this podcast session. So I think that was one of my biggest struggles, is kind of explaining to them, because it's new to everybody, that yes, I'm at home and I have more time, but my time is still valuable and I'm still a student before anything else. So that was something that I definitely had to work with, and I know a lot of other people did. But I think, the best thing you really can do is just set those boundaries as well as you can and explain to them that you need your time for yourself.
That's a very nice point. I'm sure a lot of our audience would fall into the same category of living with parents, and that could be challenging.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I have another question. Have you guys gotten used to this situation? Basically, I want you guys to compare, especially Dre, because like you've been at UTA for both semesters. This fall compared to the past spring, anything that was harder back then that's easier now? Because for me personally, as I said at the beginning, I was really struggling mentally. I really needed to have some social life, but then after a while I developed coping mechanisms. My coping mechanism was focusing on these little things in life. From cooking, I started enjoying my cooking experiences, making
Oh,
sure every now and then I make some new recipes, and that was pretty fun. Or focusing on mindfulness, learning more about mindfulness, how to be present in the moment, um, do some meditation, because it all helped me to manage my thoughts whatever that was going on in my mind, just to enjoy the little walks I had from my apartment, which is on campus, to the ERB, which is where my lab is. So it's like a 20-minute walk, so many things to think about, sometimes things that you shouldn't think about creep into your mind.
Yeah.
Imagine the situation. I'm living alone. The only person I was seeing for most of these days was just one of my lab mates, and he was living on campus too. I'm an international student, so was he, or so is he actually. So it was pretty challenging in the beginning, but I got used to it so much that I was like, all right, I'm okay with it now. But for my case, I got back in a relationship um, during quarantine, which I'm not quite sure uh, if that's something that a lot of people can relate to. But for me, I'm not even sure if it's because of quarantine, but that's something that even happened to me in a time that I wasn't expecting that, because one might think that I was like in a deep well, crying my eyes out, dying from loneliness. But the truth is, after those 2 weeks, when I started to develop this like appreciation of those little things in life and add mindfulness in my schedule, I was in a pretty better situation in my life. And then I got back to a relationship. So um, it wasn't all gloomy for me at the end. And then I got so used to it. So I was like, all right, I'm kind of liking it, not having so many students on campus. And I felt like my territory was invaded when I saw a few more students on campus at the beginning of fall, because I was here the whole summer when nobody was around.
That's good. Someone takes your parking spot. That's funny. Yeah, no, congrats on that. I mean, that's a good way to look at it for sure. I don't know. I mean, I would compare this to last fall as kind of a better way to look at life. If you aren't looking at life like this, I think you should definitely take some time and try to see it the way I see it at least. Everything was so fast last fall. And ever since all this coronavirus stuff and quarantine started, I think we all were forced to slow down. And in a way, it has picked up a little bit, but not the way that it's been before all of this started. And you just realize that time almost seems just like it is just a construct. I mean, you get so much time to yourself and you can do whatever you want with it. And that's just kind of how I've been looking at it. I am taking more classes than I have ever taken my entire college career. I am part of more organizations. I'm just doing more out of myself because, I was like, oh, I'll be at home all day. I can do it. And I can do it. And it's stressful, but it's really, you just realize that everything has slowed down a little bit. And if you give yourself a minute to just stop and think about it, it's not too bad. I think a lot of people do struggle with that, but hopefully if they can take anything away from this quarantine is just to kind of slow down a little bit, because things aren't going anywhere. I mean, it's so possible. We were all moving so fast, and it's definitely possible. People can wait on you, and other things can wait on you. These opportunities can wait on you. And yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten into a relationship like you did, Reza, but I got another positive out of it. That's crazy. I mean, good for you. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. To be fair, it was a relationship that was basically I got back to with my ex, so it was a bit easier compared to like meeting someone new. That maybe makes sense more with this context. So so I have something to ask Ayleanna about, because like you shared it offline with us previously. I thought that you might want to talk about this a little bit. You said you have a roommate, and from COVID like restrictions, has it become challenging for you, like in general?
Yeah, so it has been really difficult just because everybody they're handling COVID very differently. Like some people are more strict on following the rules to remain healthy, and some people they kind of got to the point where they don't really care anymore, and they're kind of forgetting about those people who do still care. So in that situation, We've kind of been struggling a little bit just because we're on two very different paths with this whole pandemic. I'm more on the healthier side, like I'm being cautious of where I'm going. Being in large crowds is a big no-no to me, and she's more on the, hey, like I'm in college, I want to have fun, and that I understand. But you just have to make sure that you don't forget about those people who are taking this a little bit more serious. So that's one thing that I would say to anyone who's thinking like, oh, I'm over this, just because you're over it, it's still there, it's still very real. So just remember to be mindful of those people who are being cautious, because you never know, like there's a lot of high risk people and they might not even know that they're high risk, or they have high risk family members. So I think we just have to be more cautious and definitely more caring, especially if you're in a very close vicinity with someone. So yeah, but it's been difficult. We're not really on talking terms at the moment. Hopefully things will get better, but right now I don't really see that happening. But yeah, just be more caring, more anything positive, but just don't forget about those people who do care and want to stay healthy for sure.
I think that's a really good point, actually. It seems like Corona can easily start separating people or kind of showing other people's true colors, and I've had that issue as well with a lot of people. I'm not comfortable going out in certain situations. I'm a little more comfortable with some things now, like I can go out to eat in a small group if it's just like me and another person, but I've definitely had my struggles with telling people like, no, I'm not comfortable going to a party, and you can't get mad at me for that. I mean, you have to understand like how serious this is, and some people don't look at it like that, and that's okay, but it's not okay, but they're entitled to their own opinions, and it's definitely something that I don't think anybody realized was going to happen. No one thought like, oh, there's going to be two sides to this, but there are people that simply don't care, and that can definitely cause tension between individuals, and it's just like something I don't think anyone would expect, like people would be fighting about something like this, or having to have these conversations like, hey, I don't like when you go out all the time because it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing I know, it did kind of like, it took like a small toll on me and my family, because when I was in high school, at first, I was more worried about like, oh, I didn't get to graduate, I didn't have prom, so I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it was driving my mom insane because she's very serious about health in general. So I kind of like coming here, it made me realize like this is serious, like you're putting other people at risk. So it made me feel bad, like I was selfish, I was only thinking about me and not anybody else. So that's why when I'm here, I'm very cautious of not just me and those around me. So yeah, it definitely does, it can affect relationships for sure. For sure, I do agree with you on that one.
Very great points. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that out there. I've had my own share of experiences in that matter. So guys, I want to move on to the next segment, which is talking with students, basically directly. We want to develop a new segment from the next episode where we interact with the audience in different ways. Here with us, Dre is part of the social media community at CAPS, and she can talk a little bit about how you can connect with us through our social media, and then I will follow up with little plans that we have for you guys and how you can integrate more into our program.
Yes. So if you are not already following us, you should on Instagram and on Twitter. We the ad is at UTA_caps. We also have a Facebook account. If you're one of those people who likes to use Facebook, that's cool too. I am your Friday gal on social media, and we have a couple other people on the committee. Everyone's so cool and super fun. We're always posting things. If you check out our stories, we'll have like interactive stories. We'll be like, oh, what are you doing today? Or what's been helping you? So we love when people answer and we get to kind of share different experiences and get things out of that. It's a lot of fun because people will do things and I'm like, maybe I should do that. And so social media is an awesome way to reach out with us. You can always send us a DM, whether it's, something on the more serious side, if you have questions about CAPS and like some of the services we offer, or if you are just like having maybe a bad day and you're like, I think I need an appointment, you can send us a DM and we will walk you through on how to do that. But also, if you just want to be like, hey, I saw this and I think it's really cool, what do you think? We'll talk to you. I mean, we're definitely a fun group of gals on the social media committee. But there's a lot of different things you can get from our Instagram and our Twitter. We have different resources, kind of like what Reza said about being mindful. That's actually a workshop that we do offer here at CAPS. And so we'll post about that. But we have a lot of information going on throughout our social media, and that's really the best way to kind of stay up to date with us on what's going on, and also when our next PodCAPS episode is going to be.
All right. So one thing that I want to say is that Dre touched on is the fact that you can reach out to our social media. But one thing important is that don't use our social media, please, as a hotline. If you have an emergency, you want to reach out for help, make sure you call the hotline, not our social media, because our social media is not being checked 24/7 and you might need more urgent help than that. This is a disclaimer.
And but if you do stumble upon our social media, if you are going through a crisis, there is a link in our bio that will take you straight to the website. If you don't know, UTA does have a 24-hour crisis line. So when you click on the link in our bio, it'll take you to the website, and I'll have that number if that's something that you need. It should also be on the back of your student ID, but those are two different places you can find that number if you are feeling like you are in a crisis. We aren't licensed professionals, so we can't really help you in that aspect.
That's a great point. Another great point, that it's another disclaimer that we are at the end of the day all students from different backgrounds. Andrea is from psychology. Ayleanna is just a freshman, and I'm computer science, a PhD student. So what we're trying to hear to spread the words that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. We're all stressed in our own ways, and some people are all suffering from mental health, and we should treat it and take it seriously the same way as we take our physical health seriously, and to normalize this side of life. That's all we hear, and we hope that we can take you guys and basically raise this flag in a nice way. But it's not just us. I want all of you guys to be able to talk to us as well. We don't want to be the only people on the soapbox. So we thought about different ways for you guys to interact with us. One of the ways is, as Dre touched upon that, is through our social media. And you can reach out to us, as she said, through our DMs, or we have also an email account for our PodCAPS. You can email us at our email address, and then you can tell us about any questions you have. You might have questions about any questions from our professionals that we will talk to our professionals. We will have professional as our guests coming up, and we will ask them like Q&A sessions. Again, you can email us or DM us, so we make sure it remains confidential. You can also talk about the feedbacks. If you hear anything from our group you don't like, if you don't like the sound of my voice, if I talk too much, if somebody else doesn't talk as much and you like that person, like anything, we're here for you. We're not here for ourselves. And if you like a part of our PodCAPS more than the other, if you want to suggest to integrate a new segment into our PodCAPS, anything, you can reach out to us through our social media, again, at UTA _caps for Instagram and Twitter. And our email address is podcaps.uta@gmail.com. Again, podcaps.uta@gmail.com. email us, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Another interesting thing is that we want to open the door for you guys to be here as guests on our podcasts. If you have any story you want to share that we didn't touch upon, to all of you who are listening to us, if you and your life have been affected because of the circumstances during this current pandemic in a way that we did not mention, and like to share your story, feel free to reach out to us through our social media platforms and our email address. We will go through your messages, we will consider it, and we'll get back to you about them, and we'll go from there. Overall, the message is, it's not just you hearing from us. We want others to hear from you and your stories too. And we would be happy to have you as our next guest in our coming episodes. We'll try to reach out to you guys through our social medias about the topics you want to share and talk about in our next episodes well beforehand. Yeah, so Ayleanna, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not really, no, but I would just say to definitely feel comfortable, or try to feel comfortable, and just know that you're not by yourself, that there are people out here that are willing to help you out and just talk with you with anything. This is a safe space, it's a judgment-free zone. So we're here for everybody. Just remember that for sure.
Yes, we're here for you, and it's okay not to be okay again. That's very important to remember. Andrea, any closing remarks from you about anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I think everybody kind of touched up pretty well. We'd love to hear from you guys, kind of hear what you guys are doing to stay sane during this time. And also, just as a little reminder, CAPS is here for you either 24/7 through the crisis line, or if you want to set an appointment, you do get 6 free sessions every semester. So I would really encourage everyone who is either struggling or feels like they are going to need some help and some counseling to go ahead and make that appointment. They do fill up pretty fast, to be completely honest. So I would get on top of that. If you need to, don't wait until it's too late, because that can be very difficult to struggle with. And we're getting into that hard part of the semester. So if you need any help, like I said, you can reach out to us even through our email. Or if you're not a social media person, or if you want to just DM us like, hey, how do I set an appointment, or what's the website again? Whatever you need to do, we're all here for you. It's a judgment-free zone, completely confidential, and the counseling sessions are going to be over Zoom, which is something to consider. If you're at home, as long as you're in Texas, you can do the counseling. So if you're like, oh, I can't drive up to UTA, that's okay. It's over Zoom. So completely encourage that if that is something that you feel like you may need. But other than that, loved it here. Thank you, Jed.
Perfect. Cool. So check out our PodCAPS website for the most updated information regarding all these appointments. You can get the latest news there. And also we have different online therapy assistance systems, Tao and Thrive app. These are also things that would be very helpful for you guys during the pandemic. Last but not least, as I said, you can reach out to us through our email to be guest members and talk about your stories as we move along this podcast during the semester. And don't worry about the confidentiality. Things will be exposed as much as you would like it, and as much as our regulations allow. So if you don't want to be named, that's okay too. We will just talk and see if things are basically within our possibilities. We will move forward with your story. And so this was from me, Reza, and 2 lovely CAPS ambassadors, Ayleanna, and Andrea, known as Dre.
Yes, that's right.
I hope to have you guys in our next episode, and thanks for sticking up with us. Have a great day. Bye.